just start with this one right ahead. What is the role of spirituality or religion in your life? Wow.
So, that's an interesting question for me because I'm not a religious person at all. I think that, I grew up in a family, my family was Baptist, and I think I realized early on that wasn't really how I thought. I have no, I don't have any issues with it, so much as like, some people feel like, oh, I was raised this way and I'm going to rebel against it. It wasn't that for me, To me, I guess I just feel like, I have such, belief in people and humans and who we are and what we do and the decisions we make that I feel like it's more important to focus on that. And, when you start making decisions based on what a third party who's not speaking to you is thinking, I feel like, if there is a God out there, I'm not capable of comprehending what that entity thinks about us, and how I would interact with that. So I don't think about it in those terms, right? And I've got no issue with how anyone thinks about spirituality or God or gods or whatever. I'm totally, I think what you believe is what you believe, and that's just something that's inside of you. But for me, I'm definitely more of, I guess the term would even be humanist, where I just think that I try to be the best person I can be.
Yeah.
And I try to do as much good for as many people as I can do. And I mean, even going back to what I do for a living, I mentioned, I don't know if this is going to be in a separate podcast where I said this or if it's in this one, but, I talked about how music brings bliss. And I think that, perhaps for me over the years, the music thing has become kind of ritualistic in nature, in the sense of a religious kind of way, where I really do, when you're listening to a great song, it just takes you to a place of such comfort that, to me, that's what I hope heaven is like, is, just a continual playlist of all the music I love. And then even better yet, all the music that I haven't heard that I will love.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's some things, over the years that I do. I mean, to me, once again, it's about, inner feelings, and every individual can have their own thought on this. But one of the things that over the years that I think when you hit your late 40s or something, for me, when I became 50, it was a bit of a struggle. And your mind, there's 3 times in your life your mind rewires, basically. The first time is when you're a baby. So it's not really rewiring, but it's becoming what it is. Your synapses are shaping, and you're becoming the human being that you are.
Yeah.
And then when you're a teenager, through like almost your early 20s, it's the same thing is happening. You're going through, your brain is literally going through a different process. And then there's a third time in middle age. And I feel like for me, it was right around the time when I turned 50, this was happening again, where I had, I feel like it was, perhaps an element of depression. It was certainly, I felt stress in a different way than I do right now. Like it was really, I felt incredibly stressed. And so this will sound weird, but I had a dream where I learned transcendental meditation. And I thought that was, weird. But, my first degree, actually, I said I have a degree in education, but I have an associate's degree in psychology.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm by no means an expert in anything, but it did teach me a lot of basic, ways that psychologists think about human nature and how our mind works and stuff like that. And that's always, I think, helped influence the way I think. So I did believe that having a dream about learning TM was my brain, myself, telling me that I need to do something to help myself be calm.
Yeah.
Or feel less stress.
Yeah.
And it's not good. It's unhealthy to have stress in your life. So I spoke to my wife about it and fully expecting her to think I was insane. And she's like, that might not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
And so we dug into it and ended up, we were going on vacation in Asheville, North Carolina. And we ended up finding someone there to be able to teach us TM. And we were really lucky to find these great teachers that are really well known in that community. And there was another thing that happened too, actually, before that, which was I had this dream about it. And then we were invited to perform at an event that David Lynch puts together every year. And he raises a lot of money for transcendental meditation.
Cool.
And at this thing, before the sound check, David Lynch and Bob Roth, who's one of the main guys in the TM organization at this point, his book is great. I forget the name of it. I'm drawing a blank on it, but if you look it up on Amazon, it's a great insight into TM. And anyways, they did a thing where it's like, hey, if you want to come check this out, it's kind of just a basic intro lesson to transcendental meditation. And so, one of the things they repeat over and over is that this isn't a religion. There's nothing religious about this. So that was one of the reasons why I was like, and there's been a lot of medical studies that you can research that prove that when people are in a meditative state, and it doesn't just have to be TM, but when you're in a meditative state, your heart rate goes down. There's all these things that make, physically is better for you.
Yeah.
And so I took that evidence, and then you have this thing, and there's David Lynch and Bob up there doing this, and it really was as simple as just, okay, close your eyes and let's just be calm and for 20 minutes twice a day. And it was, it wasn't like I had this light go off in me after that, but it felt good and I felt better for it.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, we really should dig into this. And so I reached out to the David Lynch Foundation people that I've been dealing with. And I think they were the ones that recommended the people in Asheville, or my wife might have found them. I can't remember now how we ended up with them. But we went, and it's a series of I think you're there, for 3 hours for 3 or 4 days each day. And for us, it sounds weird being on vacation and doing that, but it kind of worked. And my son did it as well. He's 16 now. And we were a little worried about that was this some kind of weird mind control and or something like that. But so we do that. And I got to say that there are days I miss, meditating, and I feel it, when I do. I feel more stressed and I feel less energy. So I really do try to meditate twice a day for 20 minutes. And once again, there's nothing spiritual about it. I think of it as physical. I think of it as something you're doing, even though you're doing it with your mind, but it's something you're doing. And your mind is your brain is a physical thing as well, right? So you're doing it for that. So that to me is if there's anything that's kind of ritual that I do, it would be that. But I don't look at it as any different as, going to exercise at the Y every day or something like that. Your mind, I think about, especially when I was right around 50 or so, and I was I think at that point my brain was rewiring. I would think a lot about I've probably got, less time in front of me than I have behind me. And I don't want to be older and not be coherent, and I really believe that you need to exercise your mind just as much as you do your body. So that's healthy, so I read, I think listening to music, I think that wrestling with concepts that are unusual to you. I mean, they'll say, learn a foreign language when you're older. I'm sure the same applies to learning music, that exercises your mind. So, those are things that I look at where this concept of constant learning is something that's very important to me. I mean, I've had some people ask me, why do I keep doing things? I mean, I could just stop at being the manager of the Flaming Lips, or I could just stop at being the manager of the Flaming Lips and running ACM, and it's like, I don't want to. I think part of living life is a continual movement of moving forward. There's the joke Woody Allen uses in the movie Annie Hall, where he talks about, love is like a shark, and it's got to continually move or it dies. And what we have is a dead shark, and then they break up, I feel like life is, for me, like that. It's probably different for other people, but for me, I always have to have these small steps of things that what's the next thing I want to see happen. I can't rest on just ACM in existence and it's like, okay, that's it. Now it's like, okay, what do we do next to make things better for everyone? And sometimes there's days when that's really, really hard, because just like an artist, putting a record out and people don't like it or something. I mean, there's some ideas I have that just don't work, but you can't end with that. You have to just be like, okay, well, that doesn't work. What's something else that could, and then move forward,
What is your definition of God?
Well, I think I touched on it some. I think that, that it's the individual decides what that is. So that definition is different for everyone. But for me, God is something I can't comprehend. That to me is kind of the definition. And I recognize that about myself. So that's where it ends to me,
I really appreciate when people give I don't know answers.
Yeah.
Because it's as valid as giving an answer.
Well, I mean, it's the whole thing of like, I won't just flat out say there isn't a God, because there might be, but there's no way to know except how you personally feel about it. That's the nature of what this concept of God is for, which tends to make me feel, uncomfortable, to be honest, and so, once again, my definition of God, for me is, I know I can't come up with one, because it doesn't work in my mind like that. I have a feeling that for whatever reason, what I was brought up in, I recognize to me isn't quite right. But the thing that is right, I don't know if I'll ever be able to understand that. And I've come to peace with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's good.
Yeah.
How do you determine what good behavior is?
Well, I think I keep saying this, but you know what good behavior is. Mm-hmm. You know immediately when you do something that isn't good. Mm-hmm. If you're a human with a working brain, you feel guilt when you're not doing good. Mm-hmm. And some people don't have working brains though, so that gets a little rough. But I mean, I guess to some degree, I live by the golden rule. It's like I want to treat other people like I would want them to treat me. Mm-hmm. And I think my inclination as a human is to immediately like people, to immediately want to help them in ways that I can without hurting myself. Mm-hmm. There's a fine line there. Yeah. But you have to be cognizant of not letting things get in the way of you, because the best thing you can do for other people is for you to be good first, right? Not good in the sense of good or bad, but good in I'm healthy, I'm mm-hmm. safe. Then it's just like when you're on an airplane and they tell you if the mask dropped down, put yours on first. Mm-hmm. And then you put it on your child or whatever. Yeah. Because if you're trying to put on your child and you pass out as you're doing it, you're both going to be hurt, right? Exactly. So it's that same kind of thing. You have to be in a good place to be able to help others and all that. And you also have to know what you are capable of helping people with, right? So to me, that's once again is why I want to grow the music industry and those things. Exactly. Because I know there's a lot of people here that want to do this. And I know I am one of the luckiest people in the world mm-hmm. to have the career I've had and be able to do what I want. I mean, from the time I was 15, working in a record store, I've never wanted to do anything different. Yeah. Right. And to know that I'm, odds are, going to be able to continue the rest of my life doing this thing that I love. Mm-hmm. Now it's my job to help others do that. Right. And like with my family, with my son, his dream isn't to be a band manager or work in the music industry. He wants to be an engineer, and not a recording engineer, but a mechanical or aeronautical engineer or something like that, So I'm doing what I can to help other people. And then how I'm helping him is a different kind of way, by helping him go to college and all those kinds of things, but what I'm doing for the community as a whole, I can only do what I know. And what I know well is music stuff, so.
How do we reduce the division that seems to have, I guess there was a point where when I asked this question where that has seemed to permeate our culture lately, but I guess even more so that has always permeated our culture.
Right. Well, it's incredibly difficult times, I think. And it's not unusual. This is cyclic. As a student of history, you see these things where they come and go, and that actually is really frightening because there's been horrific times in human history when horrible things have happened because people start thinking of some other group of people as lesser than them. So what we do is recognize that people who disagree with you, as long as they're not trying to hurt you, you try to understand why they think the way they do. Mm-hmm. I was not a Trump supporter. And when he became elected, we were having dinner with a group of friends and, everyone at the table was kind of, we're bummed out Trump got elected, except for this one guy who was really quiet. And he was like, well, I voted for Trump. And it's not like anyone attacked him, except I think his wife kind of did. But, I said, well, let's hear. I mean, this is
Yeah.
who we need to hear.
Exactly.
Why? What was it? And his answer was simple. He just said, I just wanted to change. And which makes me really sad that Bernie Sanders didn't run against, because I think Hillary would have been a great president, but I think that Bernie would have had a better chance to win against Trump. In hindsight's 2020.
Sure.
But I think that we need to hear why is there such the divide? And, sometimes I think we have to step back from fighting the smaller fights and work on the bigger things. And it's really easy. I think that some groups of people can focus on such a big picture, and then others simultaneously that are working against them focus on such a small thing that you're not even it's not even like there's a fight. Yeah. It's just this total disconnect. And we've reached this total disconnect, and everyone is in their little silos, and they're terrified for some aspect of who they are. And, for me, I could be terrified because it's shifting where it's not going to be older white guys in charge of everything, right? I could look at that and be terrified. I'm not, because I have faith in people as a whole. And I like that America is I was about to say, I like that America is embracing the changes, but it really isn't. I hope that we eventually embrace the change. It's inevitable. We will. And I think that's why there is such a divide now between people here in the U.S., that the people that don't want change to happen because you get comfortable with how things have always been. And it's strangely not just older people, right? It's people with certain belief sets that don't want that to change because that's how it's always been. And, I wonder if is it in our memories, in our genes, the same way that our genes tell us what hair color we're going to have and what eye color we're going to have and those things. Are things in us like memories? Is there something that gives us an inclination towards totalitarianism versus democracy? I don't know.
Sure.
But you kind of wonder because these things keep popping up. I mean, just even with the elections that just happened in Europe right now, and it's the whole world, even India, they're switching to, a lot of these people are being elected based on, I think, fear of change, and so much change has happened so quickly because of the internet and because of how information is available to anyone to learn about anything in a second, right? You just type something in and all this information pops up about something. For governments, for people that have been in power a long time, for a lot of religious leaders, this is a frightening thing because it's shaping, it's reshaping everything. It's a paradigm shift. And, in a micro view of it, you could look at the music industry and it's in the same boat where it's like people can download everything for free.
Yeah.
For a decade there, the music industry was terrified of like what's happening.
Yeah.
Well, now streaming has proven to be profitable and it's a different thing. But even that's not the end result, right? We're probably not even halfway to where it's going to end up being for another 20, 30 years, At some point, we'll probably just be able to think about music and it be, in our brains,
I'm not, because I like the experience, but
I agree. I mean, I have my records and turntable and, I still love CDs though. And I love it all. I mean, I really do. I mean, I can't, now that I have, and this will date me as well, but my iPhone which I was about to call an iPod, but when we first traveled with Flaming Lips, I would literally take a notebook full of CDs and have a portable CD player and have like 50 CDs with me. Now it's like, when the iPod came out, you could have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of records. I mean, it's just, we're in the best of times. This is the other thing that people need to remember, is that we're always in the best of times. Going forward is always better than the past. There might be things you're nostalgic for in the past, but that doesn't mean it's better. It just means it's something that you loved from back then.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm always happy with, let's move forward. Let's move forward.
Yeah. Which really transitions into my next question really well. What makes you optimistic about our future?
I think that the way we can communicate with everyone, I mean, when I was young, the idea of having a friend in Russia, for instance, was impossible.
Yeah.
You couldn't even write a letter to someone in Russia because they would stop it from getting to that person, right? But now we can communicate with anyone, anywhere, immediately.
Yeah.
It's not perfect yet, but we're getting to that point. And I think that's going to be the thing. And I think that's part of what the big fight in our world is right now, is the people that were used to separation of humanity, that aren't comfortable with the idea that in our, maybe not my, but in your lifetime, we're becoming one world instead of a whole bunch of countries.
Sure.
And, that I think is, to some people, incredibly frightening. We're becoming the Star Trek world. That's what we're becoming, which is a good thing.
Cool.
Except we have to worry about aliens and stuff. But that's another whole thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't seen them yet. So.
We haven't. No, they're out there, but we haven't seen them yet.
What makes you happy?
Oh, I mean, my family makes me happy, and I like being around people, and I like making people happy with music, and helping them discover things that they like. I mean, I've said this time and time again, ultimately, all the reasons why I've do everything I do is just so I can keep amassing a huger record collection. So, but I hate to think that it's, owning things that make me happy. The older I get, the more I look at it and it's like, why do I have all this stuff? But then I sit there and I, pull out the records and I look at them and I read the liner notes and I'm playing a record and it makes me feel really good. But, I mean, I think what makes me happy is knowing that people are continually making wonderful art and food, and how things just continually to get better, that there's an amazing Star Wars thing at Disney now. That makes me happy. I mean, it's like, it's those things, the fact that I can, just experience all sorts of things on a continual basis. That makes me happy. That I'm healthy. That makes me happy. That we're not, as bad as things are, there is still not like people are fighting in the streets, that's a good thing, So, and whenever the Flaming Lips put out a new record that I get to listen to, that makes me happy. Yeah. Whenever, I'm my favorite bands that do things. Whenever I get to see The Who play, that makes me happy. I love reading comic books. Whenever there's a new Star Trek movie, that makes me happy. So, but seeing my son grow up makes me happy. Seeing that he's on a good path, that's really important. And, being with the family that I love, that makes me happy. So, yeah. Good food, that makes me happy.
Oh, yeah. what advice do you have for people in general?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I think, Wayne, who's a very sage individual, he hasn't asked me in a long time, but occasionally when he meets someone and he talks to them, he'll say, when will you be satisfied? And, that can refer to how much are you going to eat, or are you drinking too much, or are you buying too many things, or, whatever. And I think to some degree, maybe that's it. It's like, be satisfied more. I'm not saying don't have a drive, but it's like, there's always things that can be worse. I mean, we're so lucky to live here and do what we do when there's so many places in the world that are just horrific compared to where we're at. And try not to lose sight of that and just be thankful and try in your small way to make things be better for someone else. And that always pays back in huge ways too.
Yeah. Potentially the hardest question I ask, cake or pie?
That's funny. That's a debate we have in our household quite a bit. I think both my wife and son would argue pie, no matter what. And but I got to tell you, I think I would go with cake.
Great.
I think I would go with cake. Yeah.
What's the
I would
ideal
actually go with ice cream is what I would go with.
Sure, yeah.
That's the best.
Oh yeah. So I usually try and have more of a conversation on the second one, so I'm not just barraging you with questions.
Yeah.
But do you have any questions for me?
Well, I'm obviously you've done 100 of these, and I haven't listened to them yet, but I'm going to go in and listen to them. But I mean, I'm curious for you, like you've asked all these people, especially with their spiritual and religious things. I mean, has anyone come back to you with something that surprised you and then made you revisit your own beliefs?
I think I've always been trying to just like keep spreading out in some way. About the time when I started this, I was pretty much like not fully strict atheist, but like pretty much. Now it's kind of morphed into like it's not that I don't believe in God, it's just that I don't think so. But it still has been more open than anything, that instead of being more strict and just kind of like, no, it's kind of just become like who knows,
It's funny because with you asking that question, I assumed that you were religious.
Sure.
I was, so I was a little like, okay, well, I don't want to say anything. And I don't ever want to say anything to offend anyone, because I have no issues with anyone's belief.
And I don't either, which is kind of why I keep asking it.
Yeah.
But more so it's a way of getting to know someone more than, I don't know, like you can sort of triage how well you know people, and it's like, we like the same things, or we hung out this one time and had this cool experience. But then there's like, we've talked about the nature of the universe and existence. And that's a level that I really enjoy getting to with people, because it really gets to the core of who a person is without necessarily having to, go on a road trip with them or something.
Right.
Or, watching a whole bunch of movies that they've seen too, so you can relate on that.
Yeah.
And so it's a way of getting to know people on a deeper level without, it's just more straightforward.
Right.
And I think it really gets to the core of who people are and what sort of drives who they are.
Has there been anyone that was just like, I can't answer that?
Yeah, so which is why I asked the question before recording is like, is there anything that's off limits? Can you not answer these questions?
Right.
And I won't say who, but like some of them I just didn't ask the question because they asked not to answer them. Right. And there's some people who, for other reasons kind of stayed ambiguous with it so that they had to avoid, I don't know, especially in Oklahoma, the religion is a bigger part of people's lives that sometimes it is harder to.
It's almost like coming out.
Exactly.
You might not want your family or people to know, that are, close to you. I mean, I think that, with my parents, my mother in particular, she's still very deeply religious. And I think she probably knows kind of where I'm at, but we don't talk about it.
Right.
And I'm sure she's fearful for my soul. And I don't want her to have that burden. So I don't talk about it very often.
Sure.
And no offense to your podcast, but my mom is nearly 80 and she doesn't listen to podcasts, so I'm not worried about that, But, being in a place where to some degree, I am a face that's out there for the university and stuff, I always have to be, very cognizant of that as well.
Right. But I think that also it's good to have people that have opinions that are the face of things rather than just treating it as like, nope, I don't even touch this subject whatsoever. Like, I appreciate that, we're all humans. We all have beliefs and different opinions and stuff. And that's okay. And part of the educational process is having the conversations and being able to, well, I think this because of this, and you can think otherwise, and let's talk about it.
Well, my management company is called Hellfire. So, I mean, even back, when I started that, there was an element of like, well, my family are probably going to think that me getting in the music business is a bad idea. So I might as well just call it Hellfire, And, but I am curious. I mean, talking to that many people now, how many percentage-wise do you think consider themselves atheist versus?
I think there haven't been many who just say atheist because it has like a negative connotation because of, I think Richard Dawkins is like the smuggest of atheists, and he. I feel like as someone who kind of identifies as atheist, it's like people who are that smug about it make me look bad because I have to use the same title.
I agree. Yeah.
And so I feel like less people use atheist and more people just say like, religion isn't a part of my life. And I think it's probably also because of the sample that I get, which is like a lot of musicians in like ACM and stuff. So it's probably more, well, I'm not very religious. But there have been quite a few people who are also pretty religious and pretty open about it. And I really appreciate that they are.
Yeah.
Because in that sense too, being in a generally more liberal environment that is music school, the fact that there are people that are still willing to, well, no, I know that there's probably a lot of pressure at this age and this time and place for me to not be religious, but I'm here and this is what I am. And I really appreciate that a lot too.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too how many of the students here are involved in churches as, part of the bands that perform at churches and stuff, regardless of whether they're religious or not, and I think that's intriguing to me as well,
I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to participate in music no matter what.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that regardless of what it is you could be doing worse things with music. You could be actually doing, harmful things or encouraging harmful things. I think there's a whole subset of like Nazi propaganda music, which is really weird. But even if I'm not religious, I would rather play in like a church band than do something actually harmful or promoting actual violence.
Have you ever read any Sam Harris?
Yes. His podcast is probably my favorite podcast. And I appreciate the way that Sam Harris is not an atheist in the traditional sense that we've come to know it as, but he I've read most of his books. I think Lying and one of the other
End of
sort of
Faith.
smaller ones.
Right.
I have read End of Faith. Some of the smaller ones I haven't read, but I've read pretty much all of them. And I think that it's less a stance of anti-religious people and more a stance of anti-religion for the sake of the power of belief.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, to me, it's about, once again, making decisions that there's a band out there.
Oh, yeah.
It's like making decisions that affect other people than you based on your faith is the thing that I get very uncomfortable with. We're going to invade this country because they're heathens,
Sure.
I mean, that's an extreme example,
Right.
but it's been known to happen.
Exactly.
And, to me, that's where it's like, I do not feel comfortable with people making decisions like that. If it's simply a matter of how you connect to God or whomever, personally, I'm all for that. But the second it turns into decisions made that affect the workings of everyday life for people that don't believe the same way you do, that's when I get incredibly uncomfortable, and would fight against that as much as I can,
And I think that's more of like what Sam Harris is also
Exactly.
trying to do. He's not trying to stop people from enjoying the things that come out of religion.
Yeah.
He's trying to stop people from hurting people because of belief.
Well, I think so much of, the church experience and all that is about being, with a group of people that are like-minded, you feel comfortable with. And in this world, and there's nothing worse than feeling disconnected.
Yeah.
And to feel connected to others, if where you're doing it at is church, then great.
Exactly.
I have no issue with that.
And I was raised Catholic, and I really loved my Catholic community, and it was, I never left religion because of the community whatsoever. Earlier you talked about psychology, and that plays kind of a big part of that humans want to be accepted by a community, kind of going back to like hunter-gatherer type stuff. And
Sure.
if you were shunned from the tribe, it literally meant death.
Yeah.
And so we kind of have it in us to want to be accepted by a community because I guess at some point to our brain just says, you are going to live. Yeah. And so it's it is harder. And I know a lot of people that are LGBTQ, and so people who have been in those communities that have felt like there's a part of them that can't be accepted is similar to that of not being accepted by the tribe. Even if they feel accepted in every other sense, they're still, I don't know, I feel like I can't.
Yeah, that's a good way to explain it. I mean, it is funny. We've taken our son to a few different churches just so he could experience them, you know. Mm-hmm. And it was funny, you know, going to the Unitarian church to me, where that's the one that's like, they're not really religious, but it's like a church.
Yeah.
And I was like, why would you, if you're not religious, why would you have a church, you know? Because it's not really fun waking up in the morning and having to go to it and all that kind of stuff. But you could see why people need that group. And I maybe part of how I've come to where I'm at now is that I do have my group. Mm-hmm. It's this, you know, it's ACM, it's the bands I work with, it's the music lovers group as opposed to, you know,
a church group or a life group or whatever that may be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a sense, and this has come up before on the podcast, that it would be interesting if more people treated music and certain things with a degree of sanctity.
Yeah, reverence.
Yeah, that maybe not too much, obviously, because that can produce some harmful effects, but in the same way that people meditate, taking in music in a form of sacred way can probably be really helpful.
Well, and a lot of churches do that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, music's a big part of it, you know, because it's such a great way to convey thoughts and messages and stuff. I mean, once again, I don't know if, I guess to me, I don't feel like anything needs to be formalized because, you know, I mean, I can't say this for certainty, but I don't believe that if there, you know, whatever God entity is out there, we really don't know anything about it or what it thinks or whatever. I'm not, you know, one to incline to believe that we were ever told to do things, you know. To me, it's just, life is hard enough without having to worry about these rituals and things. And once again, you know, I do believe that there's things that are inside of our genes that make our minds think a certain way too. And part of the upheaval, what's going on in our times, might be simply that we are going through an evolutionary change where some of these things that have been hardwired into us for a long time, maybe we're working towards getting that out of being hardwired into us. And that's going to create this situation where it's impossible for people that have something hardwired into them to understand the people that don't have something hardwired into them. And there's no amount of conversation, there's no amount of, you know, anything you can do to make someone understand something that is just in us.
Yeah.
You know, but maybe that's all just bull too. I don't know, you know.
Right. Well, that kind of creates a separate train of thought. And you mentioned Star Trek a few times, and I wish I knew Star Trek more than I do because I haven't spent enough time with it. But I do find that technology is probably going to be a catalyst for us to go, and we kind of already are, but going beyond biology in that sense. That in the way that we already use our phones as an extension of our brain. I don't have to memorize a whole bunch of people's phone numbers like people had to do in like the 90s or whatever.
Right.
Now you just look up a name and you call them or text them. Who calls anymore?
Or you just say, "Hey Siri, call blah blah blah."
Right. Yeah. And so we're already using our smartphones as an extension of our brain, and so at some point we're going to keep extending that and kind of like you said, beaming the music into our brain, or even just having learned things, having information going in. Do you think that technology is going to, I guess, expand us beyond humanity?
Well, I think that, yes, it will. We can't comprehend how it will.
Sure.
And, but humanity, once again, I think it goes down to caring about others and, being true to yourself and who you are and caring about others. And that doesn't change whether we have, a connection to computers as an external part of our body or not. Those things, there are certain things that just, are, by the way, a part of every religion anyways. Be good to others. That's these concepts in every religion are basically the same for good reason. We all know inherently what's right and what's wrong. Not saying that a kid stealing a piece of bubble gum doesn't understand whether that's right or wrong. They might not understand the concept that they don't own it.
Sure.
Right. But they do know that it's wrong to hit someone else and make them hurt, and that.
And they'll see that.
And they'll see that. Exactly. And that concept will expand to mean other things. So, that to me is humanity, and that to me is never going to change. The capability to love, the capability to hate, those things are part of humanity, whether we want them there or not. And any technology that, unless we create technology that can remove emotional responses from us, isn't going to change that. The scary thing is, who's going to control that technology, and then what is the end result that they want? And you don't know. They might not even be evil, quote unquote, but they might accidentally do something that ends up just messing everything up. But I don't know. I've seen enough and read enough science fiction that, it'll all work out in the end.
Maybe.
Or we all die and it doesn't matter,
Sure. And I love cyberpunk, so it's like sometimes those are pretty pessimistic, but
yeah.
I guess one of the last things, where do you hope the Oklahoma music industry goes? How do you hope to shape it in a direction?
Well, I see a place in the future where we have some record labels that are based here. We have artists that instead of having to leave to become successful, they can stay here just like the Flaming Lips have. And that not only are the bands here, but also their managers and their record labels and their publishers. These are all very obtainable goals that can easily happen in the next decade. The first dilemma was not having a trained workforce to be able to do these things. And that's what ACM's been doing for the last decade. We've been training the people now that are hungry for these type of jobs, right? And a lot of it is, the music industry is incredibly entrepreneurial. Yeah, there are these huge entities like Warner Brothers, which now is Warner Music, Sony, EMI, whatever, Universal. EMI is part of other things now, but Universal Records. There's all these big things, but there's also tons and tons of smaller record labels that can become big things. You know, all these other record labels were small at one point as well, you know. So to me, what I want to do is create a landscape for the entrepreneurial mindset to be able to have the means to grow record labels, grow management companies, grow booking agencies, grow producers and artists and all those kinds of things here. And they have the infrastructure to help them. So, you know, I've been working a lot with the state and with the city to figure out ways to do that. And ACM is a big part of that. I mean, once again, it's like there are 4 recording studios here that if you can connect in some way to someone that's connected here, you can record for free. You know, and I think that's a huge asset for the community. And you know, and just once again, training that workforce of people that are, there's still more to learn always, right? You know, even if you come out of here with a degree, it's not like you're going to go record U2, right? You know, there's a lot of other levels to get to before you get to a point like that. But you have a better foothold to climb that mountain. Whereas before, it was just luck. There was only luck. And luck is still a part of everything. But now you can weigh the dice with certain skill sets to where hopefully the odds are better in your favor because you have had, you know, the training and you have resources available to you. And I feel like if you look at where Oklahoma City was at 10 years ago to where we're at now as far as the music scene goes, I mean, there was no, if you look at studios, Castle Row, if you look at venues, there was no Tower, there was no Criterion, there was no Jones Assembly. You know, there was none of those things that now we have.
Yeah.
And that's a,
Yeah.
you know, that's a you know, a big thing.
What's stopping Oklahoma from getting to an Austin point or a Chicago or whatever?
Well, I think what's stopping us is still the people, the powers that be, although they like the idea of a music industry here, I think they still can't wrap their heads around that something as great as music can be a business too. You know, I think they believe that, I think most people believe that you can't learn to do this, that you can only be born into it. Like you're born a great musician, right? Is what they believe. And that because you're a great musician, these other things come as well. And that's just not the case. You know, and part of what I've been doing the last decade has been teaching people that that's not the case. You know, not only our students, but the community as a whole. And there's also this, you know, thing where people, you know, like I said, I'm 53 now, and a lot of people that are mayors and on city council and things like that are my age or younger. And the idea of the music industry working because they've seen Nashville, because they've seen Austin, that have population bases similar to ours, because they see it can be successful there, they are the ones that can kind of push some buttons to make that happen. And they don't see it as impossible as the generation before them did. You know, some of that 70 now saw the music industry as like, oh, that's just not going to happen here, you know? And now I believe there's a new generation of leaders that we have that do see that. So now it's our job to explain to them the paths we can take to make that happen.
Yeah. Scott, thank you for doing this with me.
Yeah, thanks. This was fun. Yeah.
Do you have stuff to plug?
Well, you know, we're enrolling at the school. So, you know, if you are interested in, you know, going to school here, hit us up, you know, and you know, we teach people to be performers, producers. We teach various aspects of the music business. So I'd love for you to come tour the school and see what we're doing, you know, and see what that's all about. I have 2 albums coming out soon that I'm involved in. One is a band called Night Moves. It's a band from Minneapolis that I co-manage with Scott Marsh, who works at the Jones and books all the bands there and everything. And their record's coming out June 28th on Domino Records. And they're amazing. They're really great. Young band. It's their 3rd album. This is the first one I've worked with them on. And then they'll be touring as well. And the Flaming Lips have a record coming out on in mid-July called The King's Mouth, which we released for Record Store Day already, but it's going out for wide release now. So it'll be on stream. You'll be able to stream it, and there'll be CDs, and there'll be, instead of gold vinyl, there'll be black vinyl copies of it available. And, that's kind of it. Color Music have a record that came out recently, and they're working on a new record as well. They're very prolific.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's just, I just, all the bands from here. I mean, there's so many great artists. There's this band, the Sweet Talkers, that came to visit me the other day, and their EP is really great. They're a band that needs to change their name, but I'll let them I'll let them figure that out. But it's not a bad name. It's just there's other Sweet Talkers, so it gets confusing. One of my favorite bands here is the Love Seats, who are also perform under the name Chelsea Days with a couple extra guys. I really dig what they're doing. There's so many things that are involved here. I always so happy with Dante Jones, who's one of our alums, who has a band called They that's on Warner Music. I think he's great. But I'm almost just as curious about the other things he produces and other songs he works on and stuff like that. Yeah. So, it's just never ending. Keep an eye on the, Facebook pages for ACM and for Hellfire, which is my management company, Hellfire Enterprises Limited. I post a lot of stuff on that. And just, those are the things I want to plug, I guess.
Yeah. Listen to and pay for the music.
Yeah. Yeah. These days, streaming is great. Just listen and listen and listen.
Yeah. And I will say that, now that I'm a graduate, but ACM has been a huge part of my life, my formation as a person, and foundational for where my career is going to go. So I think that I wouldn't be who I am without ACM.
Yeah, me neither. It goes both ways. It's like I'm a different person because of all of you that I've gotten to know and everything that you guys have done. I recently got this award from the governor, for the Arts and Education Governor's Arts Award. And, I've said this time and time again, and I really believe it. I didn't get it. The school got it. Our students got it. It was about, all the things that we collectively do. I was just the representative for that. And, this hopefully, it makes me really happy to hear you say that, because that's what I want, is just this to be a catalyst for you to be able to do something you really want to do and make a good living doing that and be happy. So
that's the next step, making a living, but that's a separate thing.
Well, maybe you'll become this huge podcaster and people will spend lots of money wanting you to sponsor them and all that kind of stuff. So
we'll see. Yeah. Well, again, thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I'm Santiago Ramones.
Scott Booker.
You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. I make music. You can find my demo on my website, Songs with Words, and you can pay money for that or not. Pay whatever you want. And then you can find this podcast on all of the places that you can listen to podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Stitcher. Himalaya is a cool thing. I think they have like tip jars or something. So if you want to give me money, that'll be a neat thing. And I always end my podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.